On Tuesday the 14th of April 2026, a company called Allbirds was worth 21 million US dollars. This is the same Allbirds that 4 years earlier had been valued at over 4 billion US dollars. The next trading day, Wednesday the 15th of April, Allbirds experienced a meteoric rise. The stock opened at $2.49, but by lunchtime in New York, it was valued at $24.30. In a single session, the price had rose just under 600%. There was a reason. That morning, the company had announced it was leaving the shoe business. It had sold its brand, its name, its intellectual property, everything a customer would recognize as Allbirds, for $39 million. And the corporate shell that remained, the listed entity that was trading on the NASDAQ, would be renamed Newbird AI. It would no longer sell sneakers. This company would lease GPUs. This is the story of Allbirds, the rise, the fall, and why they're now in AI. Tim Brown spent most of his 20s playing for the New Zealand national football team. He was a defender, not a particularly famous one, but he was curious. In 2007, on the way home from a match, he started thinking about the shoes he was wearing. Synthetic, branded, loud. He wondered why footwear had to look like that. He was from a country with 30 million sheep and just over 4 million people at the time. Wool was everywhere. It was also, at the time, in structural decline. Recycled polypropylene had eaten away at the mid-grade fibre market, and New Zealand Merino, the cooperative that aggregated the country's wool farmers, was looking for new buyers. In 2014, with a development grant from the New Zealand wool industry and no experience in fashion, Brown filmed himself next to a flock of sheep in the Canterbury Hills.
You can't grow up a kiwi and not understand how good wool is. It's tough, regulates temperature, reduces smell.
He uploaded the video to Kickstarter, asking for $30,000. A professor at Northwestern, where Brown had been studying, told him the business idea probably wouldn't work. Put it on Kickstarter so you can fail and get on with it. Brown did not get on with it. He found a co-founder in San Francisco, Joey Zwillinger. He was a biotechnology engineer who had previously sold algae-based fuel. Together, they spent 2 years commissioning a merino textile from Reda, a mill outside Milan that usually spun wool for Tom Ford and Gucci. In March 2016, they launched a single product, a $95 lace-up sneaker, sold only online, no logo. They called it the Wool Runner. Within 2 years, they had sold 1 million pairs. Time magazine called them the most comfortable sneaker in the world. Leonardo DiCaprio was an investor. The shoes became the de facto uniform of Silicon Valley. The thing people liked about Allbirds, the wool, the simplicity, the sustainability, that's not what made the numbers stack up. What made the numbers stack up was that Allbirds was direct to consumer. A $95 sneaker sold through Foot Locker, for example, would have left maybe half that once the wholesaler and the retailer took a cut. A $95 sneaker sold through Allbirds' own website, however, meant the company could keep almost all the money. That allowed the company to spend more on its materials than a conventional shoe brand could, and still run higher than average profit margins. It also meant they had one product to advertise, one website to run, one logistics pipeline to manage. They didn't need a retail footprint, they didn't need a sales team, they needed a warehouse and a Shopify stack. In 2016 and 2017, this was the new type of company. Casper was doing it with mattresses, Warby Parker with glasses, Dollar Shave Club with razors. The theory was that the internet had made the middleman obsolete. A brand could own its customer directly, from the first click to the third repeat purchase. And for a while, this theory held up. By 2018, Allbirds had raised $27.5 million. By 2020, it was valued at $1.7 billion, and by late 2021, it was ready to go public. In November 2021, Allbirds went public on the NASDAQ. The IPO valued the stock at $15, raising $348 million for the company. The stock opened at more than $21, and the company, briefly, was worth $4.2 billion. Now, that was the peak, but every number from here on is smaller than the one before. Now, being a public company changed the question the founders had to answer. Privately, Allbirds had been asked to prove it could sell a wool sneaker that people loved. Publicly, it was being asked, how big can it get? The answer, they decided, was much, much bigger. In the prospectus, the company described itself not as a sneaker brand, but as a lifestyle brand. It pitched performance running shoes, it pitched apparel, it pitched flats, boots, a full wardrobe. They built the performance shoe called the Tree Dasher. It was reviewed poorly. They built an entire clothing line, and it was reviewed poorly. They opened more than 20 stores across the United States. They hired ahead of demand. They ordered inventory on the assumption that the expansion would work. But the expansion did not work. In 2022, Allbirds reported a loss of $101 million. In 2023, it wrote down inventory. Its share price fell below $2. Revenue, which had been growing, started shrinking. The people who had bought an Allbirds shoe because it was a plain wool sneaker, they didn't want a performance running shoe. And the people that did want a performance running shoe didn't want a shoe from Allbirds. The brand that had once meant one specific thing now meant several slightly conflicting things. And the people who ran it couldn't figure out which one was load-bearing. In 2024, Tim Brown stepped down as co-CEO and Joey Zwillinger followed. The company brought in Joe Vernachio, a former Under Armour executive, to lead what was called a strategic transformation. The transformation had a plan. Retrench to the original lifestyle footwear, close unprofitable stores, shift international markets from direct to consumer to distributor arrangements, and stop burning cash. By the end of February 2026, every full-price retail store in America had closed. 2 outlet stores remained in the United States, and 2 full-price stores remained in London. The rest of the global retail footprint was gone. This was the state of the company at the start of March 2026. On March 30, 2026, Allbirds announced it was selling itself. The buyer, American Exchange Group, a New York-based management firm that specializes in acquiring consumer labels that have run out of room. Its portfolio already included Aerosols, Ed Hardy, Rampage, and several other names that had once had their moment. The price? $39 million. The transaction covered all of Allbirds' intellectual property, its brand, its product lines, and a residual operational footprint. The Wool Runner, as a thing that exists in the world, was now owned by the same company that owns Aerosols. But the press release buried a detail. The sale did not include the company. It was an asset-only sale, so only the assets were sold. American Exchange Group was buying the brand. It was not buying the NASDAQ listing. The listing, ticker symbol BIRD, would remain. It's a corporate shell with no business, a pile of cash from the asset sale, and a legal fiduciary duty to do something with it. What it did was pivot. On the 15th of April 2026, just 16 days after announcing the sale, the company now formally separated from the footwear brand. It announced it would be raising $50 million in convertible financing, acquiring high-performance GPUs, and renaming itself Newbird AI. It would, in its own words, become a fully integrated GPU as a service and AI-native cloud solutions provider. It had no cloud infrastructure experience, it had no existing relationships with GPU suppliers, it had no customers, it had, at that moment, no employees trained in the business it was about to enter. What it was a NASDAQ listing, a check for $39 million, a pending check for $50 million more, and access to the word AI. The market's response was what we opened the video with. The stock closed that day at $14.50, up from $2.43 that morning. The next morning, it fell by 36%, but by the end of the week, it had stabilized and was trading at about $10 a share. Now, all of this is subject to a shareholder vote, which is happening on the 18th of May, 2026. If shareholders approve, then Allbirds stops being Allbirds and starts being Newbird AI. If they approve, then the thing that rose out of the ground on the 15th of April is funded. If they don't approve it, then the picture is less clear. About a decade ago, a company called Long Island Iced Tea Corporation made soft drinks. In December 2017, during the first retail cryptocurrency boom, it announced it would be renaming itself Long Blockchain. Its stock rose 380% in one session. It never became a functional blockchain company. The SEC charged 3 people with insider trading, and in 2021, the stock was delisted. Several former Bitcoin mining firms in the last 18 months have announced pivots to AI infrastructure. The reasoning they offer is that the hardware overlaps. The reasoning the market rewards is that mining has aged worse than the word AI. Now, there is a name for this. It's sometimes called a shell pivot. It doesn't tend to originate from a strategy so much as the structure of public markets themselves. A publicly traded entity is a durable financial instrument. Its ability to raise money, to attract shareholders, and to be a vehicle for something doesn't die when the thing it originally did dies. The listing outlives the reason for existing, and it can be refilled. This is what's happened to Allbirds. The brand that Tim Brown once built in New Zealand, the wool, the mill in Milan, the Kickstarter, the one product catalog, now lives inside an American licensing company where it will be managed alongside Aerosols and Rampage. Someone will still make the wool runner. It will sit on racks at discount retailers. It will, over time, come to mean something slightly different than it used to. But the NASDAQ listing that Tim Brown built, the corporate entity, the ticker, the $4 billion valuation memory, now belongs to an AI compute business that has no shoes, no wool, no New Zealand connection, and no operating history in the business it's pivoting into. Look, Newbird AI might work. The demand for high-performance compute is real. Enterprises are struggling to secure capacity, and the hardware market is tight. If the financing closes, if shareholders approve, and if the people running it can execute, a real compute business might come out of it. But that business, whatever it becomes, will not be the company Tim Brown built in New Zealand.
You can't grow up a Kiwi and not understand how good wool is. It's tough, regulates temperature, reduces smell.
My brother and I embarked on a journey to create our first shoe,
Designed specifically for sockless shoe wear, with as few seams as possible. The result is the wool runners.
I'll dance with you.
We need your help to shake up the shoe industry and take New Zealand wool and the wool runners to the world. Okay, sheeps are funny.